These teams had the worst drafts I've seen in years. So we are just now wrapping up the 2025 NBA drafts, and there are a lot of things they're talking about. You have a bunch of teams who could be considered big winners, like the Hornets or the Suns or the Hawks. And there were a bunch of great players who were taken. Obviously, Cooper Flag goes #1 to the Magic. The San Antonio Spurs get two of the top-rated prospects in the draft. That's all good. But unfortunately, every team didn't have as good of a draft as the San Antonio Spurs, as the Charlotte Hornets, as the Washington Wizards. And some teams might have set their franchise back a couple of years. Now, I have to preface this by saying, listen, it's very early on. And even these teams that I mentioned with the picks that they made, they could very well prove me wrong and end up going to have great futures and great careers and a bunch of success. I mean, at the end of the day, these are draft prospects. We don't know how they're going to look in the NBA. We're just projecting what they can be. And we all know that there is some path that they could all succeed. However, in terms of team fit or who the player is or any other thing, there are a lot of things to be head scratching about when it comes to certain franchises that I will mention in this upcoming draft. Now, the first franchise we have to talk about is none other than the Toronto Raptors. I mean, you draft a guy in Colin Murray Boyles who a lot of people like. I wasn't the biggest Colin Murray Boyles guy because he's a guy offensively. He just doesn't have that strong of a game. He gets his points in the mid-range. He's undersized. He can't really, his handle's not too strong, so he's not really able to get around certain dudes. And he's a post guy. But I get it. The defense is legit. He was one of the best defenders in the entire NCAA. And some people are projecting him to be a Draymond level defender. I think, especially when you bring in the context that Kamen Maluach, who just seems like a Raptors guy, was right there on a team that already has so many wings and needs that big man presence. You go with Kamen Maluach. I mean, you go with Colin Murray Boyles. Now, of course, they're probably going to end up trading R.J. Barrett and maybe some other pieces, but Colin Murray Boyles just gives such a logjam, and it just becomes so tight in that Toronto Raptors locker room and when they're on the court, because now you have no spacing and you don't really have any upside with anybody. And then, like I said, when you bring in the fact of who was on the board, a Kamen Maluach is right there and you didn't take him, that just doesn't make sense at all. Why would you not take a guy who not only seems like the type of archetype that you like, but also fits your franchise perfectly? It just doesn't make sense, and I would be scratching my head a lot if I was a Toronto Raptors fan. The second team that I will bring up as a loser for me personally is none other than the New Orleans Pelicans for a multitude of reasons. The first thing is, it's not because of who they drafted. Some of my favorite prospects were Jeremiah Fears and were Derek Queen. I love both of these guys. Derek Queen, in terms of him having that kind of big guard feel where he has an amazing touch. He's really good around the rim. He has a face-up game. He can post up. He's just an all-out baller, and we saw it throughout the NCAA tournament. You have a Jeremiah Fears who honestly led that Oklahoma through the trenches in a very tough and competitive SEC that one could argue was the best conference in the entire nation this season. He did that. He excelled. He brings a lot to you when it comes to playmaking, driving downhill. Doesn't really give you too much defensively or when it comes to shooting. But, hey, he's one of the most explosive and athletic guards in the entire draft. With that being said, the Pelicans, the way their team is set up, you already have a Jordan Poole you just traded for. You have a DeJounte Murray. You have a Jose Alvarado. Where does Jeremiah Fears fit at in that rotation? Unless you're going to get off DeJounte Murray, which, hey, I can see. You're going to get off DeJounte Murray because of the fit. You have a new front office. I get it. But he's still on the team, and whoever you trade him for, I don't really see you getting that good of a value back because he's coming off of an injury. This front court, I just really don't love it, and I don't like that fit next to Jeremiah Fears, considering they also don't have the proper pieces around him for him to succeed. And then you have a Derek Queen. You already have a Zion Williamson. You have a Yves Missy. I just don't understand what his fit is there. I would prefer him in a team next to somebody who has a bigs, who has some rim protecting around him, because he's not really going to give you much defensively. And it's the same thing with Derek Queen. I mean, with Jeremiah Fears. They don't have really too many people for him to create and for him to set up. This just is not two great fits that I can honestly say I like. And the fact that he traded up for Derek Queen, where, hey, if you have two guys that you want and you really want to get them, then you really want to get them. And if they go about playing them a certain way, the way that I think they should play and build around them, then cool. And everything I say is out the window. But I just don't think that's happening, because that's not usually how things happen in the NBA. And then you trade your pick next year unprotected. to the Atlanta Hawks, that just doesn't make sense. Next year's draft class, who knows how good it's going to be, but knowing that you guys are most likely not going to be that good next year, you gave up a potential top 10 pick to the Hawks. Just not a smart move overall. And the third team I have to talk about, and it pains me to say this, is none other than the Brooklyn Nets. Now, the Brooklyn Nets, I wasn't even mad at their first pick. I like Igor Dimin, and I like his fit, and I like the fact that Jordan Fernandez saw something in what it could do with him. He is a high IQ, high field guard who's great in the pick and roll and really great at processing. But you then follow that up with drafting Nolan Traore, who's essentially the same thing. He's a high IQ guard, really good when it comes to pick and roll. He's a little bit better at going downhill than Igor Dimin, but just two guys who can't shoot, that's not what you want to put next to Igor Dimin. And it just did not make a lot of sense to me. And then you get a Ben Seraph who essentially fits that same thing. So now you're building some redundancy. Like now you're just using the same archetype 3 different times. Now I will say, I am a guy who likes these archetypes typically. But I think they are even better if you put a certain caliber of players around them, like a Rasheed Fleming who they passed on, or some players who are really good off the ball. And the Brooklyn Nets simply just don't have that. And then you draft a Danny Wolf and a Drake Powell. I mean, Drake Powell can give you some upside when it comes to shooting and defense and being a really good player next to these type of guys. Danny Wolf is an older guy, and I like the fact of older guys because they typically find some way to contribute in the league at the next level. But I just think there are much better options you could have gotten all of these picks, and that's why I have to consider them a loser, because the people that you got, you just could have gotten way better people at these picks. And the fact that you passed up on guys like a Ryan Calvert, like a Maxime Renard, like a Rasheed Fleming, like a Tyrese Proctor, like guys who would have fit better on this team, the fact that you passed up on them is just not the best look if I'm Brooklyn. And although I have upside and I'm not as low on this draft as everybody else is, I can't say I'm the biggest fan either. But at the end of the day, these are just my opinions. This is just how I view the draft and who I didn't really like to see what they did tonight. This is just all I have, and until next time, peace.